so. Wanna dance? Okay.
If you grew up in the 90s, TGIF wasn't just television, it was an event. Friday night meant pizza boxes on the coffee table, a packed couch, and that warm feeling that your favorite characters were basically part of your family. Every week, you watched kids your age, or just a little older, crack jokes, learn lessons, and somehow make life look easy under perfect living room lighting. But here's the part we didn't really think about at the time. Those kid actors weren't just having fun on TV. They were working. Long hours, big expectations, and an entire industry built around making sure they stayed lovable, marketable, and ready for the next episode. Even when they were still figuring out who they were. And while some TGIF stars stayed in Hollywood for decades, a surprising number did something that feels almost unthinkable in today's fame-obsessed world. They walked away. Not because they failed, not because they couldn't make it, but because they chose something else. Privacy, stability, school, a different career, or simply a life where their name wasn't a brand. So tonight, we're counting down child actors from TGIF who stepped back from the spotlight and took a different path. Some exits were quiet, some were complicated, some were honestly inspiring, but they all share one thing. At some point, they decided the Hollywood script wasn't the one they wanted to live. 7. Teen Angel, Katie Volding. Let's start with one of TGIF's deep-cut shows. The kind you remember like a dream, you're not totally sure happened until someone else confirms it. Teen Angel had that late-era TGIF energy where the block was experimenting, trying to keep the magic going with quirkier premises. And it really doesn't get quirkier than a teen who dies in a freak accident and comes back as a guardian angel. Classic, this is absolutely a sitcom pitch concept. Katie Volding was right in that era's sweet spot. Recognizably TGIF, but not locked into the kind of mega fame that follows you forever. And that's part of why her story fits this list so well. Some kid actors leave Hollywood with fireworks, public meltdowns, tabloid arcs, big headlines. Others just drift out. They do a few projects, finish the run, and quietly decide that being famous isn't the goal. That quiet exit is actually the most relatable version of walking away. Because for a lot of child actors, the pressure isn't just the work, it's the expectation that you're supposed to want more. More roles, more attention, more what's next. And if you don't chase it, people treat it like a mystery. Like the only reason you'd step back is because something went wrong. But sometimes nothing went wrong at all. Sometimes you're a kid, you do the job, you get older, and you realize you want a life that isn't measured in auditions and ratings. And the most TGIF thing about that is this. It's basically the lesson these shows tried to teach every week. You don't have to follow the loudest path. You just have to follow the one that feels right. 6. Boy Meets World, Lily Nicksay. If there's one TGIF walk-away story that fans bring up constantly, it's the original Morgan Matthews from Boy Meets World. Because for a lot of us, Morgan wasn't just a character. She was the comedic chaos button. The little sister who could walk into a scene, say something brutally honest, and leave everyone stunned. And then, at a certain point, she's just gone for a stretch, and the show moves forward like it's no big deal. When you're a kid watching, you shrug. TV does weird stuff, but as an adult, it hits differently. Because that disappearance isn't just a sitcom quirk. It's a reminder that these are real kids with real limits. Lily Nicksay played Morgan early on, and then stepped away. And what's striking is how simple that decision can be. A child realizing they don't enjoy the experience anymore. We treat acting like it's a dream job, especially for kids. Like it's all laughs, meet and greets. And being on TV means you made it. But imagine being 6 or 7 and having adults you barely know telling you where to stand, how to speak, what to wear, and when you're allowed to be tired. Imagine being asked to deliver jokes on command while you're still learning multiplication. For some kids, that's exciting. For others, it's overwhelming. And either reaction is completely valid. That's why her story matters. It isn't sensational. It doesn't need a dramatic, "where are they now" hook. It's simply a kid opting out. And honestly, that's kind of the point of this whole video. Walking away from Hollywood doesn't have to mean something broke. Sometimes it just means someone listened to themselves early enough to choose peace over pressure. 5. Sabrina the Teenage Witch, Nate Richert. Harvey Kinkle is one of those TGIF characters who feels like a time capsule. The sweet, normal boyfriend standing next to absolute chaos, trying to keep up while witches and talking cats turn his world upside down. He wasn't the too cool for school guy. He wasn't the edgy one. He was the warm, steady presence. The kind of character you only appreciate more as you get older. And that's part of what makes Nate Richert's post-TGIF path so interesting. Because from the outside, it's easy to assume every sitcom star has the same trajectory. You do the show, you graduate into movies, you become a permanent celebrity. But Hollywood doesn't work like that, especially not for people who get famous young. The machine moves fast, and it doesn't always leave space for someone to be a human being in the middle of it. In Richert's case, his story reflects something we don't talk about enough: the emotional crash after the applause stops. When you spend formative years being recognized everywhere you go, the silence afterward can feel like whiplash. You're not just navigating career choices, you're navigating identity. Who are you when you're not that guy from that show? What makes this fit our walked away theme is that stepping back doesn't always look like a clean exit. Sometimes it looks like distance. Sometimes it looks like choosing a quieter life. Sometimes it looks like protecting your mental health when the industry's pace isn't compatible with your reality. And that's a powerful reminder for anyone watching. Leaving the spotlight isn't a failure. It can be self-preservation, it can be growth, and it can be the bravest choice someone makes after spending years performing for everyone else. 4. Family Matters, Jaimee Foxworth. Let's talk about the TGIF mystery that still gets referenced like a running joke, Judy Winslow. Because Family Matters didn't just change tone over the years, it changed its gravitational center. The show began as a family sitcom, and then Steve Urkel became a cultural phenomenon, and suddenly the entire universe of the series tilted toward him. In that kind of shift, characters get squeezed, storylines get reshuffled, screen time disappears, and in Judy's case, she was written out in a way that felt jarringly abrupt. One season she's part of the family rhythm, and then she's essentially gone, with barely any acknowledgement. For viewers, it's a continuity oddity. For the actor living it, it's something else entirely. Jaimee Foxworth's story is complicated, and it deserves to be handled with empathy instead of gossip. Because when a kid is removed from a successful show, it's not just losing a job. It's losing structure, community, and a sense of purpose, all while you're still too young to have the tools to process what happened. That kind of sudden, "you're not needed anymore" message can echo for years. This is where the TGIF nostalgia gets real. The shows felt safe. The lessons were wrapped up in 22 minutes. But the business behind them could be cold, and child actors often paid the price for decisions made far above their heads. If this segment has a takeaway, it's not to point fingers or turn someone's life into a punchline. It's to recognize that walking away isn't always a neat choice. Sometimes it's what happens when the industry walks away from you first, and you're left trying to rebuild a life from the rubble. 3. On Our Own, Jake Smollett. Here's a TGIF entry that feels like a hidden level in a video game. On Our Own is one of those shows people remember in flashes, like, wait, wasn't there a TGIF sitcom with a bunch of siblings? Yes. And it had a very specific hook, a family dynamic where kids had to become a team, fast. Jake Smollett was part of that cast, And his walk away from Hollywood path is one of the most fun pivots on this list because it's so genuinely different. Instead of doing the standard child actor to adult actor pipeline, he leaned into another world entirely. Food, cooking, hospitality. The kind of career that's still creative and still intense, but isn't built around being recognized in public. And that pivot makes sense if you think about it. Acting is performative, sure, but it's also dependent. You're waiting for roles, waiting for approval, waiting for a phone call. Cooking is different. It's immediate. You do the work, you create the thing, people experience it right there. It's a craft you can control with your hands. What I love about including him here is the reminder that creative people don't only exist inside entertainment. A lot of former child actors are still artists. They just choose mediums where their personal life isn't the product. And food is a perfect example. It's social, it's expressive, it's cultural, but it doesn't require you to live your whole life on camera. So, if you ever wonder why a kid actor might leave Hollywood, this is a great answer. Because they didn't stop being talented. They just found a lane where the talent didn't come with the same pressure, the same exposure, and the same feeling that your identity belongs to everybody else. Number 2, Step by Step, Christopher Castile. Step by Step is basically the TGIF blueprint. Blended family, big personalities, constant one-liners, and a house that somehow always looked like it was ready for a magazine shoot. And Christopher Castile, as Mark Foster, played a role that a lot of TGIF shows relied on. The smart kid who could cut through the chaos with a perfectly timed line. But what happens when you're the smart kid on TV, and then you grow up in real life and realize you want your intelligence to be more than a character trait? Castile's post-show path is one of the clearest examples of walking away from Hollywood and building something totally separate. Instead of staying in entertainment, he moved toward education and academia. And that's not just a career shift, it's a shift in values. Because Hollywood rewards visibility. It rewards being known. Education rewards something else. Patience, depth, long-term effort, and a kind of impact that isn't measured in ratings. There's also something quietly brave about becoming a private person after being a public one. When you're a child actor, your face becomes familiar to strangers before your adult self even exists. People think they know you because they watched you grow up in their living rooms. Choosing a path like teaching or academic work is a way of saying, I'm not a character you can keep revisiting. I'm a real person, and my life belongs to me. And that's why this segment lands so strongly near the top. Because it's not a story about fame fading. It's a story about someone intentionally stepping into a life with different rewards. One where the applause is quieter, but the purpose can be bigger. 1. Full House, Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen. Okay, I'm breaking the one per show rule exactly once, because Full House gave us the most famous child actor situation in the entire TGIF universe, and it's literally impossible to tell the story without both of them. Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen didn't just play Michelle Tanner, they became Michelle Tanner. And for a certain generation, Full House wasn't complete without that tiny kid wandering into scenes with an iconic line and perfect comedic timing. But here's the wild part. After living that level of visibility for basically their entire childhood, they didn't spend adulthood chasing more of it. They didn't make a big dramatic return to acting. They didn't try to rebrand themselves as the serious version of their kid fame. Instead, they stepped away and built something different, fashion and business, while staying famously private. And that decision is honestly the ultimate walked away move. Because if anyone had a reason to keep the Hollywood machine running, it was them. They had brand recognition that most actors would kill for. They had built-in nostalgia power. They could have cashed in forever. But they chose control. They chose distance. They chose a life where they could create without being constantly consumed. It's also a perfect ending for this list because it shows the core theme in the loudest possible way. Walking away isn't always running from something. Sometimes it's running toward something. Privacy, autonomy, adulthood on your own terms. And if TGIF taught us anything, it's that happy endings don't always look the way you expect. Sometimes the best ending is simply getting to write your own story. Conclusion. Looking back, it's kind of amazing how TGIF managed to feel so safe. Every week the problems were real enough to matter. Friends drifting apart, parents not understanding you, growing up too fast. But the world always landed on its feet by the end of the night. You got your laughs, you got your lesson, and you went to bed believing everything would work out. But the reality for a lot of child actors is that the episode structure doesn't exist. There's no neat wrap-up. There's no final heart-to-heart scene where the music swells and everything makes sense. There's just growing up while the world watches. And in that context, walking away from Hollywood can be one of the healthiest decisions a person can make. Some of the people on this list stepped back quietly. Some had complicated roads. Some swapped fame for education, for a new craft, for a more private life. But the common thread is simple. At some point, they reclaimed ownership of who they were. And honestly, that makes the TGIF nostalgia even sweeter. Because the best message isn't fame lasts forever. It's that you don't owe anyone access to your life just because they once watched you on a Friday night. So now I want to hear from you. Who's the TGIF kid you've always wondered about? And are there any other walked away from Hollywood stories you think belong on this list? Drop them in the comments, because the TGIF universe is bigger than we remember, and there are still a lot of stories hiding behind those laugh tracks.